Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have one hell of a good upload for you. Before we get into it though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those books are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken too much of your precious time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first part of the upload is going to touch on some scientific facts and a little theory. A subscriber contacted me and shared a very interesting article out of the Smithsonian magazine, and I then proceeded to look more and found some more. Now, about a month and a half ago, I discussed an article that I read out of National Geographic about these tunnels or tubes underground that were 7 feet tall and carved out but not by human beings. There was scratch marks all throughout the walls, like it was done with something with hands but not humans. And that was in Brazil. They just recently had found some very terrifying evidence that this was going on elsewhere in the world. And they decided to blame it on hyenas. These two articles are very interesting, and it kind of opens the door to the thought process, which then comes theory. Remains of 9 Neanderthal butchered by hyenas found in Italian cave. Fossilized bones appear to belong to 1 woman, 7 men, and a young boy. Recent research unearthed a trove of remains at the site that first yielded a Neanderthal skull in 1939. Archaeologists surveying the Guattari cave in Rome had discovered the fossilized remains of 9 Neanderthals. One of the early humans lived 90,000 to 100,000 years ago, while the others lived between 50 and 68,000 years ago. Researchers had previously found a Neanderthal skull in a cave in 1939. The new find makes the location one of the most significant places in the world for the history of Neanderthals, says the Italian Ministry of Culture in a statement, per a translation by the Associated Press. As Lorenzo Tondo reports from The Guardian, Stone Age hyenas used the cave as a den and likely targeted the Neanderthals as prey. Hyenas hunted them, especially the most vulnerable, like the sick and elderly individuals. Mario Raffo, an archaeologist at the Tor Vergata University, stated to The Guardian. The newly discovered remains belong to 1 woman, 7 men, and a young boy. The team surveying the cave also found the fossilized remains of hyenas, rhinoceros, giant deer, and wild horse. It is a spectacular find, Raffo tells The Guardian. A collapse, perhaps caused by an earthquake, sealed this cave for more than 60,000 years, thereby preserving the remains left inside for tens of thousands of years. Researchers plan to study the fossils, DNA, and learn more about these ancient human relatives. Already analysis of the Neanderthal dental tartar has found that they mainly ate cereals, which contributed to brain growth. Per Elisabetta Povolado of the New York Times, the 1939 discovery of the Neanderthal skull in the cave attracted international attention. The paleontologist who studied it at the time argued that a large hole in the temple was the result of ritual cannibalism. But the new research, which began in October of 2019, shows that the damage was probably caused by hyenas. Neanderthal lived across Europe and southwestern and central Asia beginning around 400,000 years ago, according to the Smithsonian Human Origins Initiative. They vanished about 40,000 years ago, though many modern humans still carry some of their genetic legacy. Francisco Di Mario, an archaeologist with the Cultural Ministry, tells the Times that it is rare to find so many Neanderthal remains in one place. The fact that hyenas managed to ensnare this group suggests the area, now home to the coastal town of San Felice Cerrillo, hosted a large population. Whether the carnivores killed the Neanderthal or simply ate the human remains following their death due to outside causes is unknown, reports the Times. The researchers say the cave may have been home to the Neanderthal before the hyena made it their own. The scholars discovered burned bones, carved stone, and bones with cut marks suggestive of hunting. We found rich traces of Neanderthal life, Ralpho told the Times. As Franz Lids wrote for the Smithsonian Magazine in 2019, quarrymen in Germany discovered the first known fossilized Neanderthal skull in 1856. Researchers long dismissed the species as lacking language, art, and other aspects of human culture. But in recent years, archaeological finds have testified to Neanderthals' diverse range of activities, including making art, cooking, trading jewelry, and burying their dead. For San Felice Cerrillo, the new discoveries represent a possible tourist attraction, as Mayor Giuseppe Scabani tells the Times. He has applied for funding from the European Union to develop the market. The cave is located on the grounds of a hotel that is now up for sale. Scalbani hopes to buy the property and turn it into a center for Neanderthal studies. A very thought-provoking article, very interesting either way you look at it. But then the subscriber who emailed me today this article, and it brings us all the way from Italy to Saudi Arabia. Hyenas hoarded thousands of human animal bones in Saudi Arabian lava tube. The huge stockpile includes camel, rodent, and cattle remains. Researchers uncovered the remains in the Jarsin lava tube in Saudi Arabia. Archaeologists in northwestern Saudi Arabia have unearthed a massive collection of bones, likely stockpiled by striped hyenas over the past 7,000 years. Found in the Jarsin lava tube system, a sprawling network of tunnels formed by volcanic activity, the hundreds of thousands of bones belonging to at least 14 kinds of animals, including cattle, caprids, horses, camel, rodent, and yes, even human. The researchers' findings are newly published in the Journal of Archaeological and Anthropological Sciences. Lead author Matthew Stewart, a zoo archaeologist at the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Germany, tells Gizmodo's Isaac Schultz that the team identified hyenas as the culprits after analyzing cuts, bites, and digestive marks found on the bones. Striped hyenas are very avid accumulators of bones, Stewart says. Researchers have been investigating the site, which is located in the country's Heret Kabar lava field since 2007, but they only ventured into the cavern's depths a few months ago. Per Gizmodo, another group of archaeologists reported hearing possible hyena snarls in the tubes, prompting them to keep their distance. For the study, the team analyzed 1,917 bones and teeth recovered at the lava tube. Radiocarbon dating of the small number of these samples found that they ranged in age from around 439 to 6,839 years old, suggesting a long use of the lava tube system by carnivores per the paper. In a Twitter thread quoted by Al Arabia English Joanne Surrey, Stewart notes that hyenas transport bones to dens to be consumed, fed to the young, or cached. The study adds that the carnivores engage in both hunting and scavenging activities, killing some animals while simply hoarding the remains of others. A key sign that hyenas were responsible for the huge piles of bones was presence of human skull fragments. The mammals are notorious for rummaging through graves for grub. It's always just skullcap that survive, Stewart tells Gizmodo. Hyenas seem not to be really interested in skullcaps. We found maybe 5 or 6 skullcaps with gnaw marks on them at the site, but only skullcaps, nothing more. Lone hyenas typically snack on dead animals, but packs prefer to hunt, targeting prey like antelope, hare, rodent, and birds. Yumjerson is far from the only example of hyenas stockpiling huge assemblages of bones. As Riley Black wrote for the National Geographic in 2010, Sir Sko Chlum Komen Cave in Czech Republic contains more than 3,500 well-preserved large mammal bones collected by carnivores. A new study took place as part of the Paleino Desert Project, which seeks to track human and animal migrations across the Arabian Peninsula. Saudi Arabia's harsh weather makes this task difficult. Hot conditions can make bones break down, and some ancient remains actually disintegrate when touched. The most surprising thing comes down to just how well preserved the material is, and how much material there is, given that Saudi we have no faunal remains, really, Stewart tells Gizmodo. In a Twitter thread, Stewart alludes the lava tube's excellent condition for preservation of the bone. He adds that Jerson and other similar sites in the region is likely to hold valuable insights into the environments of the Holocene Arabia. This study is just the tip of the iceberg. Once again, another very interesting and thought-provoking article. But if you are me, and you think like I do, which a large majority of you do because we come to my channel every day, a couple of things popped out at me in this last article. Another group of archaeologists reported hearing possible hyena snarls in the tubes, prompting them to keep their distance. Okay, that's interesting. Now, that interests me because I don't believe it was hyenas. Now, I want to share with you why I don't feel like it was a hyena, because the striped hyena, which they are claiming these stockpiles are made from, there's only about 10,000 of them left in the wild today. They're not a very big version of the hyena, like the African. The most notable would be like the African savanna hyenas that just, they're friggin' huge. They don't care about, they'll go toe to toe with lions. So I just don't feel like those snarls they were hearing were a striped hyena. And they're probably very lucky to turn around, because if they went any further, well, we might not have this information. The second thing that caught my eye was the statement that came from Mr. Stewart. A key sign that hyenas were responsible for the huge pile of bones was the presence of human skull fragments. The mammals are notorious for rummaging through graves for grub. Well, what else hangs out in graveyards? Our precious Dogman does. Now, the article prior to this, they talked about holes in their skull that were blamed for these hyenas. So they were talking about how these holes in the skull were caused by these hyenas. Just, I don't know, something right there doesn't fit right to me, because they're talking in this article that hyenas don't like skull caps. So why are they biting into the skull? It's just a common sense question. That doesn't make sense to me at all. Now, like I said previously, the most notable hyenas would be, in the African savanna. I know that's not the name of them, but they are like 250 pounds. The striped hyena is not that big at all. We're talking somewhere between 50 to 120, 25 pounds at max. Now, these striped hyenas were supposed to take down humans, possibly in a pack, and if there was singular, but I don't know. It's an amazing find. It truly is. Because, yes, it does help archaeologists, map out human evolution and this and that, but is it really that true? Is it really, are we gonna say yes, hyena? Because just certain things point out to me with red flags. And I know a lot of people who listen to the channel who dislike me. Put the check mark there, give me the dislike button, always say I read into too much. Well, you know what? Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. But in the beginning of the year, I said there was going to be numerous deaths and attacks. Just from just from the lockdown and people not being out. And I said there are going to be a lot of them, and there has been. So maybe sometimes I am right. Maybe not. Who knows? I'm probably 80% wrong, but that 20% sure adds up sometimes, I guess. Maybe it accounts for something. I don't know. But I wanted to share this with you guys. I hope you enjoyed this part of the upload. Now let's hit some encounters. Today's first encounter. I will not be using my real name for privacy reasons, but I will say I'm a 15-year-old female from Nebraska. I know you're probably thinking cornfields and the middle of nowhere, but that's not where I'm from. I live in Omaha, but I've always loved the outdoors. I go hunting and or hiking almost every weekend with my dad or with friends. Okay, on to the experience. I went to Nebraska National Forest every long weekend with two friends who I will call Haley and Todd. I've known them for years, and we never hike alone because of the risks, so we became a group. Anyway, it was spring break of last year when we went on a week-long backpacking trip. It was a 7-hour drive there. Me, being 14, could not drive, but Haley was 16 and Todd 15. Haley drove us there, and we had a great time for the first few hours of the drive, but when we got closer to the forest, something felt off. I know it sounds cliche, but I had this feeling like I was going to get sick. I ignored it and thought I was just nervous. So Haley and Todd, I guess, noticed I was off. They asked what was up, and when I told them something wasn't right, they laughed, thinking I was just trying to scare them. A few hours later, and the feeling is still there, but we were at the trailhead. I got out and everything was as should be. We grabbed our packs and off we went. I felt like I was at home in the trees, and the feeling was soon forgotten. We walked a little over 5 miles that day before we set up camp. We had a 2-person tent that Haley and I brought, and then a hammock Todd had brought. After we set up camp, we ate and just began chilling and fire talking. There was no alcohol or drugs. Todd began complaining how he didn't want to sleep in his hammock. I didn't want to listen to him complain and offered to switch places, and he gladly accepted. So the night went like usual until about 2 a.m. when we all got tired and went to bed. Well, everyone but me. I have extremely bad insomnia, so I was just mending to the fire and chilling. Finally, I decided to get into the hammock and read. So I put out the fire, grabbed my headlamp, and got onto the hammock. I noticed that something was off, but I could not place it. That's when it hit me. It was completely silent in the woods. No crickets, no animals, nothing. My skin started to crawl. Something definitely was off. I turned off my headlamp and lied down and kept silent. I wanted to try to hear some type of animal to ease my worries. That's when I heard it. Something was dragging against the tent. I wasn't even 5 feet from the tent. It freaked me out, and I did something really stupid. I called out my friend's name. The noise stopped. I got no answer, but this feeling of dread was something I haven't felt before or since. That's when I felt it. Something poked the hammock. It was not a soft poke. It was like a jab. I was horrified. What the hell had just touched me, and where the hell was it? I was frozen. I also suffer from anxiety, and I felt the panic rising. I couldn't understand what was going on. That's when I made another mistake. I decided I wanted to see what had just jabbed me. All this happened within seconds. I reached up, clicked on my light, and that's when I saw it. It was out of my nightmares. There was a creature that about 4 feet above me, staring at me, kind of hunched over. I was about 3 feet off the ground, so this thing was probably 7 or 8 feet tall. It looked like a dog, but it also didn't. It had the face of a wolf, but human in a way. The eyes looked red, ears looked like a clipped pit bull. Its mouth pulled back in a snarl, and the hand, claw, paw thing blocking its face. I was terrified. Its teeth were huge and sharp. The paws, if you could even call them that, had 5-finger type things with sharp long claws that looked like they could tear me apart. I stared at this thing for what felt like hours, but was probably only 5 seconds. That's when I screamed bloody murder. As soon as I did that, this thing let out something between a scream and a howl. It was deep, and I could feel it. When I heard Todd yell, "What the hell was that?" I heard the tent opening, and that's when the creature and I finally broke eye contact. I yelled at Haley and Todd to help me. I looked back up, and this thing was climbing the friggin' tree. It was still staring at me. That's when I saw the back of it. It had a tail of a dog, grayish, silver fur, a black mane down its back and a hump. I took this opportunity to scramble out of my hammock. We took off without grabbing anything. I had no shoes, nothing. We made it to the car, but the whole frickin' time back I heard something in the trees. The next day we had park rangers go get our things, as we were too freaked out. When they got there, everything was gone. Not even trash remained. It was as if we were never there. They blamed us for lying. We had no idea what had happened. I had no idea what I saw or why it just didn't kill me. I've not been back in the woods for a very long time, but still every time I close my eyes, I see that thing and hear its roar. Today's second encounter. I just picked up my friend from his house. We had both snuck out that night from our parents' places to go smoke. We used to go and do this and hang out with stray cats and feed them, listen to music, and look at the stars. This night we did some reading with tarot cards. My friend was trying to show me how to read tarot. We did a couple of spreads and talked about Wicca before we started hearing noises. My friend was a little high and I was sober at the time because we were going to be doing some driving that night, and I decided not to smoke. We knew that the cats were around, but these noises were not the strays. In fact, it was like people were running around us in circles. My friend panicked and asked me if I could hear it as well. Trying to stay calm and quiet as possible, I just nodded and tried to whisper to him, "Stay quiet. Remember, we are in a sus area, and we don't know if we're surrounded by people." He thought for a minute before grabbing onto my sweatshirt. We sat there looking around as we slowly cleaned up our things and picked them up. Stand up slowly and let's walk to the car. Hold this in your hand and you will throw it if someone runs at us, my friend whispered, handing me a metal bottle. We both got up and slowly went to the car and got in safely. Looking around while I was pulling out of the parking spot, I realized that there was nowhere for anyone to hide if they were surrounding us. We pulled out and decided to go for our drive. We drove to the neighboring town where my grandmother lives. We started to get hungry, so we started to look for a Jack-in-the-Box. As we drove, the car started following us. I quickly recognized it as a cop car. We pulled into the wrong lot and tried a different fast food place because we could not find a Jack-in-the-Box. The cop hid in a neighboring lot and followed us as we left. He followed us for miles until we got back onto the main road. As we drove down this road, my friend started to panic. For some background, my friend is a practicing witch and says he experiences a feeling. I trust him, but tonight scared me. Don't turn there, he mentioned, and motioned on. I looked over at him, but could see panic in his face. Why, what's wrong? I asked him. We're going to die. That street is giving me a really bad vibe. I turned away from it and continued straight until we got to the highway. To distract him, we talked about bands. I talked about the band I used to be in, while he talked about his dream band. We laughed the whole way back. Once we got back to his town, we got on the street that goes down into a wooded area where his house is. We're about 4 miles away from his house. The streets were dark as there are no street lights, just lights from the houses. As we pull onto the last street, both of us are quiet. The sides of the street are filled with trees. As we turn and start driving ahead, this creature ran across the road. It looked like a deer, but a human too. It took only 2 steps to cross the street before it's gone. Its legs were long, and it itself was tall, about 8.5 feet, counting the antlers. Its eyes glowed white for a split second. We saw it. As soon as it appeared, it was gone. Before I could panic or say anything, my friend says, I know we both saw it, but we are not going to talk about it. Don't say it, don't acknowledge it, he said sternly. I agreed, and ever since, we haven't spoke about it. Today's final encounter. So I'm from Alexandria, Kentucky, and I saw something last night that I cannot explain. Last night was Midnight Madness for our school. It's basically some stupid football event during the summer, but everyone goes to see people they haven't seen over the summer. I went with my 2 friends and one of their girlfriends. We got there around 10:45. Me and my friends were getting pretty bored of the event, and one of my friends had brought some dabs. For those who don't know what dabs are, it's concentrated weed. We got in my buddy's car and were looking for a place to smoke. We were driving around this subdivision that had very thick forests all around. We settled on this abandoned house and decided to smoke in the woods behind it. My friend was setting up his rig and we realized we had forgotten water for the dab rig. A dab rig is basically a bong for dabs, and it needs water or else it's very harsh to smoke. Well, we all had parked a little bit down the street so no one would be suspicious. Nobody wanted to go back to the car because it was at least a 5-minute walk. So I decided to go back for the water. While I walked back, I heard scratching from behind the nearby house. It kind of freaked me out, but I thought it was probably a dog or some other animal. I made it to the car, got the water, and started to head back. As I walked by the house, I heard the scratching. I began to hear it again, but then I heard what sounded like footsteps kicking up gravel when something started to try to run. I turned and I saw something that has kept me up for a while now. Now keep in mind, I am 6'2", 17 years old, so I am bigger than most things. And this thing that I saw had easily beat me in height by 2 to 3 feet. It was slender, but it was long, almost stretched out limbs. I couldn't really make out any more details because it was so dark. This creature was running from one backyard to another. I never saw its face, only its body. It ran 2 feet, but it was faster than any person I had ever seen run. Hell, it was faster than anything I had ever seen run. The creature made it from one backyard to the next, about 50 to 90 feet in 3 or 5 seconds. I was standing in the middle of the street about 30 feet away. I stood there for a second in complete shock. Then I ran as fast as I could to my friends. I ran through thorns and bushes to make it back to them. I ran and told them what I saw. I'm not sure if they believed me, but the panic in my voice was enough for them to know that I had seen something. We packed up the rig and went to the car. I've been up all night trying to figure out what I saw. The closest thing I found on the internet was something called the Dover Demon and something they call a wood devil. I never saw its face, so I'm not sure what it was. Oh, and finally, I was 100% sober. We never ended up smoking the dabs that night. Wow. What an upload. Man, oh man, oh man. Those encounters were absolutely terrifying. The scientific part I loved. I love the science part of this. Almost as much as I enjoy the encounters. Sometimes a little more, because it gets my brain just kind of, I don't know, gives it something to think about, I guess. I'm not really sure how to explain it. But that first encounter, holy shit, that is absolutely terrifying. Huh. Sorry for the brain fart there. Actually, it wasn't a brain fart, it was more of a brain freeze. I was just thinking about how terrified that girl must have been. I'm going to invite her on the show. Hopefully she agrees. Anyway, with that, I want to bid everyone farewell. And, everyone, be kind to each other. There's enough crazy shit out in the real world. We really don't need to be picking at everybody and everything. And with that, see ya!